Hey, what's going on? I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from the Black Business School, the Black Financial Channel. I wanted to give you a quick update on what's going on with the stock market and trade war and everything else. Trump is threatening to escalate the trade war by taking on Huawei, which is a large Chinese company that is heavily invested in the creation of 5G networks all around the world. He's threatening to disrupt their supply chain and make it difficult for them to do business in the United States. And he's also actually already labeled the company kind of a threat to national security and things like that, which is really interesting because the Chinese really depend on this company for revenue and global reach and global access to world markets. I would imagine that this trade war is going to keep escalating to some extent. I still can't help but to feel that the Chinese have a little bit more to lose, but that does not mean that they don't have levers that they can pull. For example, their extensive ownership of U.S. treasuries means that they can go and sell a bunch of those treasuries and screw up our markets. But the problem is that what they do to us comes back to them, and what we do to them comes back to us. And the question is, what's the political will of the leadership? I also know that the Chinese government has about 3.6 trillion in their war chest to sort of fight against these tariffs. Now, how far are they willing to go? Nobody knows. The Chinese economy has just slowed. And on the flip side, Trump, just received some of the best economic news and information he could ever get. The unemployment rate's super low and all this stuff. But the thing for Trump is that, if he continues to escalate, that good economic news might become bad news. But it's interesting because he seems to have this base that's extremely loyal, and I think that they would reelect him despite, bad economic news. But with that said, I will say this: when you talk about tariffs, everybody talks about tariffs as if they're always a bad thing, and trade wars as if they're always a bad thing. They're not always a bad thing. It depends on what part of the economy you're in. It depends on, what your perspective is, long-term or short-term. You have to go back to the table and renegotiate at some point. The U.S. has had a huge trade deficit with China for a very long time, which means that they're engaging in what Dr. Claude Anderson refers to in books like Powernomics as the doctrine of unequal exchange. And that's where Africa got raped of its resources because what the Europeans were taking far exceeded in value to what the Europeans were giving away. So ultimately, the way to think about tariffs and the way to think about the relationship between the U.S. and China is to think about the relationship between the black community and the rest of the world. When you look at the black community and the rest of the world, are they giving us as much as we're giving them? No. We're buying all their goods. They're putting stores in our neighborhoods. They're taking all of our money, and we're not getting much in return. Well, the United States is kind of in that same situation. We're importing tons of Chinese goods, and we're giving the Chinese a ton of our money, but we're not able to access their markets as readily and get, and make as much money from them as we're actually giving them. So it kind of becomes this imbalanced thing that upsets a lot of people. And simultaneously, what's been really interesting is that a lot of corporations, because we've set up these extensive trade relationships around the world, like NAFTA and the way we trade with China, a lot of corporations have moved their jobs over to these other countries to get the access to the low-cost labor and all that stuff. So the trade is a wonderful thing when you're talking about corporate profitability. Corporations certainly make more profits when there's wide open trade and everything's just sort of free-flowing across the borders. But what about that person who, used to work at the automobile factory that's no longer located in Milwaukee? They used to be in Detroit and were making good money at, Ford or GM, and now they're making cars in Mexico or they're making their cars in China. So one thing about tariffs that's interesting, and I'm not saying that I'm advocating for or against it. I'm just going to say that everything is, the answer to most financial questions is it depends. The big issue here is, a tariff. What does a tariff do? A tariff basically puts a tax on foreign goods. It says, look, stuff that's made in other countries, you got to pay more for it, which means that you pay less for things that are made domestically. Excuse me, not less, sorry, scratch. Well, you do pay less, but you pay less, but at the same time, there's reduced competition, which means while you're paying less, you're actually paying more, if that makes any sense, right? You're paying less than what you pay for the foreign good because of the tariff, but you're paying more because now there's less competition, which means that domestic producers can increase their prices on you, right? So the argument has always been tariffs are bad because American consumers pay more money for their goods. That's cool, But remember, when you go to Walmart and you're able to buy a t-shirt for, $2 or whatever it is, there's a reason for that. The reason is that the companies or the job that somebody had to make that t-shirt has now moved to a country where the labor costs are, $3 a day. So you're getting cheaper goods, but you're losing all your jobs. Right? You see what I mean? Not all your jobs, but you're losing a lot of your jobs. So the way I kind of see tariffs, and I'm not saying I think tariffs are always a good thing. I don't believe that. I think that you have to be careful. You have to carefully pull the levers. The reason I don't think tariffs are always a bad thing is for the same reason I don't believe that buying black is a bad thing. I believe that buying black is a good thing to strengthen the community, even if you have to pay more. You follow me? So the analogy is like this. For the U.S. to put a tariff on Chinese goods and force people to buy American is just like us putting a tariff on all goods that are not made by black-owned companies and forcing people to buy black. When black people were forced to buy black, did you necessarily get the absolute best quality that you could have got if other people were making it? Maybe not sometimes, but you got good quality, but you didn't have as much competition. Did you always get the best price? Not necessarily, but every dollar of that money that you spent stayed in your community. So you paid a little bit more, but you gain more because you're getting more jobs. The jobs to make that product are actually in your community as opposed to being somewhere else. You follow me? So with China, we pay less for our goods, but the job that goes along with making that particular product is not going to be in the United States. So while costs are cheaper, your income is cheaper. Wages for American workers have not gone up in real dollar terms. Meaning in 2019 dollars, they haven't gone up hardly at all. Corporate profits have shot up, and I believe that it's deeply connected to globalization. These wide open borders, let's get rid of the tariffs. Let's, make our cars wherever we want to make them, and screw the people that used to work in the factories. We're going to go hire somebody in Mexico for $10 a day, because it's cheaper than an auto worker who's going to charge you $25, $30 an hour, right? And so the point at the end of the day is to say that I don't believe the media hype that tariffs are always bad. I think that the reason that the narrative is typically stated that as tariffs are always bad is because a lot of the media is corporate media. Either see the corporate media or the stories are written by people maybe who haven't thought about all sorts of ways to look at this issue, right? So, one benefit of the trade war will be that, there are going to be some American companies that are going to make more money. There are going to be some jobs that might stay here or come here that wouldn't have otherwise been here. And it's not always a bad thing. I want the trade war to come to an end, but the renegotiation of the deal with China is absolutely essential. Like we had to. China was just kicking our butt in every corner. So this was kind of necessary. But then again, is Donald Trump the right guy to do it? It depends on what you believe politically. I'm not going to judge that. So I'm out of here, guys. Have a good day. Don't forget, make sure you hit the subscribe button, share button, and like button. Also, go sign up at theblackbusinessschool.com if you want to learn more about business and finance and all that stuff. We have a great faculty and a great set of programs. It's theblackbusinessschool.com. You can actually get started for free, or you can pick a program. It's up to you. See you guys soon. Take care. Have a good day. Peace.